That's always my official cue. Good afternoon slash morning, everybody. I know for the three of you, actually, good morning.
Good
For
morning.
us East Coast time people, good afternoon.
Good
Have
morning.
a fant Sorry, Chelsea, what'd you say?
I said good morning or good afternoon.
Yeah, either one. Well, we have a fantastic group with us today. I am going to give people a few minutes to join. While people are joining and before we do introductions, I am going to hopefully, we'll see, release a poll question here just to see, gauge people's familiarity with Motivity. Just as we do our introductions, want to make sure I touch on that if needed. I did see plenty of familiar names register for our discussion today, which is super exciting. But before we jump into introductions, I'm just going to go ahead and launch that poll just to get an idea of how many people have experience with Motivity. So I'll let that run. Feel free to fill that out. And then while that is running in the background, I'm going to pull up something behind the scenes here. Oh no, I lost at CEC. Have, I'm sure many of us have, your mouse and your keyboard kind of like attachments for your laptop so you don't have to like yeah, well, that tiny little USB thing got lost. So now I don't have my mouse and it
That's
feels,
brutal. Yeah,
oh, it is. It is. I'm so not used to a setup without it. So yes, absolutely. This meeting is gonna be recorded and we're happy to send it out. So absolutely, Kendra. All right. Let me pull up our introductions. Okay. Let me take a look at, of course, let me take a look at our poll. Oh no. Oh, there it is. Okay. Oh my gosh, super interesting. Okay, so all of our answers say that people do not have experience utilizing Motivity. We did have several Motivity users join for today, so I was interested to see, but that's really helpful. So we'll kind of jump into it now that we're a few minutes past the hour. So before I do introductions to our panelists, for those that are not familiar with Motivity or maybe have not used Motivity, we are a data collection platform. So an electronic data collection platform. We have a ton of other things you can do, but I want to focus on where schools are utilizing us. So we are an electronic data collection platform. Schools utilize Motivity to collect data on IEP goals, academic goals, behavior goals, replacement skills. They can generate reports. Sometimes that's maybe a report that they're providing for a caregiver, reports that they're providing for kind of internal IEP team analysis, and then to supplement their IEP reports as well. And you'll hear Dr. Katie, Alexandria, and Chelsea talk more about what those pieces are, but that's kind of an overview of what Motivity does, particularly with schools that we work with. So really appreciate everybody being here today. My name is not Motivity Admin. My name is Catherine Martin. I'm a BCBA and I do kind of all things with Motivity. And I've been really fortunate to work pretty closely with a lot of the schools that use Motivity as somebody that has used data collection in schools in my own clinical work. So, but we don't really need to focus on me. What I want to do is spend some time on our panelists. So I am going to be reading your introduction so that I don't mess anything up. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel and then we'll get the conversation started. So, Chelsea, if you don't mind just waving, I know your name's there. But we have Chelsea Biznuni. Chelsea is a BCBA with Clovis Unified School District, bringing 16 years of experience in ABA, including the past four in school-based settings. She focuses on classroom management, behavior support planning, and building capacity with school teams. Chelsea joins us from Clovis, California, and she enjoys Pilates and spending time with her two young boys who are so cute. Excuse me. We also have Alexandria Jones with us. Alexandria is a BCBA, also with 16 years of experience. When I saw that, I was like, did I just kind of go into pilot mode? But no, that's so funny. So you'll see some overlap here with Chelsea and Alexandria, both bringing 16 years of experience. Alexandria has 10 years of experience in school settings. She is part of the behavior consultation team at Clovis Unify. That's also the team that Chelsea is a part of. On that team, they support school students through consultation, training, and evidence-based interventions to improve student outcomes. Alexandria also joins us from Clovis, California, and enjoys going on walks with her husband and their dog at the end of the day. Love that to recharge as well, Alexandria. And then last but not least, we have Dr. Katie Palmer. Dr. Katie Palmer is a customer success manager at Motivity with 14 years of experience in ABA. She specializes in integrating ABA within school settings and has worked across both clinical and educational environments, including opening an alternative placement school and consulting with districts nationwide. She joins, oh my goodness, she joins us from Palm Desert, California, and enjoys hiking, golfing, and traveling. I'm the outlier. I'm from Maine. All of you three get to be lucky in California. Well, thank you all for being here today. I'm really excited. You have, of course, Alexandria, Chelsea, you guys have similar experience and obviously both kind of working on the same team today. So I would love to hear if you guys don't mind talking more about what your model looks like. As we were preparing for this conversation, it's certainly a unique model, but one that maybe other schools could look towards. So either Alexandria or Chelsea, do you mind telling us more behavioral consultation team? What does that mean and what does that look like for you with the students that you work with?
Yeah,
Go for it.
so I know. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Um, when I came onto the team, I learned about it in Clovis Unified. It was something very unique because I had worked in Kings County, which is another little spot over here in California. But and that in that model, we were
Hmm.
part of the special education team. But when I came here to Clovis Unified, they said, well, we have this comprehensive wellness project. And
Hmm.
it was started because of a lot of mental health crises that were
Yeah.
happening in the district. But they also realized that like our general education students are having some of these behavior needs and social emotional needs
Hmm.
that don't quite need the special education setting, but just
Hmm.
need more support in those gen ed settings. So they developed this project. And so the behavior consultation team is one little part of that project.
Hmm.
And it's comprised of six of us behavior analysts and actually three school psychologists.
Okay.
So it's one for like each area that Clovis Unified has. And so our goals are really to work with the school teams to try to equip them with tools for behavior and social emotional support. But our
Hmm.
team also provides behavior intervention with instructional assistants that we train specifically to go out and handle sort of like your behavior interventionists or RBTs.
Hmm.
Um, and so we work really closely with them, and that's where our team utilizes Motivity the most,
Okay.
because it's helping us with that part of our implementation with those children that have those high, severe, challenging behaviors just in the
Hmm.
general ed classroom.
It's so interesting, and it sounds like you guys are obviously working closely with not an IEP team, but just a team of people that are kind of supporting these specific students. So how do you find, um, Chelsea, I'm sure you and I have talked about this, but maybe what has been maybe some barriers you've experienced, or beyond that, where have you found to be really effective when collaborating with a team like that for this type of model with the students in the school system?
So you're asking specifically like what barriers have we come across kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah, I guess I'd be interested, and that's probably like my own bias, I'm sure, which is working with certain working in the school district always comes with different challenges, I think. And then you guys have a really interesting model where it's incredible. You have all of these kind of subject matter experts that are there to support that student in very specific places, but while still having to work together. So maybe not challenges, Chelsea. What have you found has been effective, or what have you liked about that type of model and getting to work with these other professionals?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're looking at one specific child, it's so nice to be able to come together as a team.
Hmm.
Um, we like pride ourselves on the ability to like go back and forth with school psychologists specifically who have
Yeah.
had a lot of experience working with a variety of different kids, kids who
Hmm.
have IEPs, kids who don't, and then just the specific psychs that we get to work with have a lot of um, knowledge and the resources that the district has. And so
Hmm.
um, being able to work with them has been amazing.
Hmm.
That's not to say that there aren't challenges or hurdles that we do have to come up against,
Yeah.
specifically maybe like admin and what resources are available to them.
Hmm.
So the way like our district works is each school, I mean, we have our Title I schools who have access to different resources than maybe our non-Title I schools. And so us as behavior analysts having to kind of identify what can we utilize and what team members are available for us to be able to really roll out these plans with fidelity.
Hmm.
And then obviously being able to capture the data using Motivity has been super helpful because we're able to real time kind of show admin and staff like this is the progress that we've made.
Hmm.
What other supports could we either add or look, we're looking actually at potentially fading our support
Yeah.
because of all you have done here as a
Hmm.
site to kind of come together and support this particular student. And
Hmm.
so the data for us has been huge to be able to kind of guide those decisions. It really does build the narrative when we're looking at what are the next steps for that particular student. And so, yes, there are barriers, but I think as a team, we do a really good job of like pulling one another in. If we know, like, okay, this is this particular BCBA strength. Okay, come on over, take a look at the
Hmm.
student. And like the collaboration is truly what's key to the success of our team.
Yeah, that's really, really cool that you guys have the ability to work with all of these different team members. I think it's so important in general, thinking about, I know we kind of use this more in a clinical setting, but that whole child approach, that's important in any setting the child is living and breathing in. And so being able to provide the support that they need for everybody that's involved and giving visibility into what that progress or maybe lack of progress looks like is obviously important. Okay. Well, I could go down a rabbit hole, so I'm going to pull myself out a little bit. We'll go back down it. But before I do that, I want to give Dr. Keaty, I want to talk a little bit more about how you found Motivity. So, Dr. Keaty, of course, is now working with Motivity. We're incredibly lucky to have her. But I would love if you could just share your story a little bit, both the work that you've done in schools and then kind of how you found Motivity.
Sure. The little slice of time where I was working as an educational consultant across multiple districts in the
Hmm.
country, I was also doing remote supervision
Hmm.
for registered behavior technicians who were our one-on-one staff out in various parts of the country.
Hmm.
And I was in Boise, Idaho at the time. And so remote supervision is a little bit tricky, but I had worked so often in school settings, whether it was an integrated setting where a child was in the mainstream with a one-on-one and they were receiving that assistance, or whether
Hmm.
it was in a special education setting where the one-on-one was doing a lot of the instruction and
Hmm.
supplementing the classroom teacher's instruction or helping the child stay attending to that instruction.
Hmm.
So the RBTs that I was supervising, because they were not close to me, we have a requirement. We have to actually sort of get to know the student and
Hmm.
get eyes on. And as a BCBA, I want data. I want my staff to be collecting data, whether it was
Yeah.
paper, pencil or not. And I would prefer electronic because it's easier to keep eyes on. The other thing I really, really needed was the video.
Yeah.
Motivity has a FERPA compliant, HIPAA compliant video capture. So I could
Hmm.
be live with my staff. I could either be live or I could watch it later. So sometimes we would be
Hmm.
live and they would have their AirPod in and we were doing bug in ear coaching
Yeah.
as they were working with a student. I was helping them. Okay, check your prompt levels.
Hmm.
Try prompting at a higher level right now, or back off, or stop talking, which is something I say quite often to my staff. Just stop talking, give it a
That's
moment.
me. That's what I need.
And that video was really incredibly helpful. It also becomes a part of the client record. And so then I could use it in a session later, one-on-one with my RBT. We were on Zoom and we would show the video. We could pause it. What did you notice? What did you
Hmm.
see? What did you see on the video that you didn't see in the moment? And it was an incredible teaching tool. So many BCBAs in school settings, or even special educators or supervisors, case soup managers, they have a hard time understanding what's going on
Yeah.
with how their staff are working with the child, what the staff may or may not understand about the IEP goal or the teaching procedure.
Hmm.
That video was incredibly helpful. And my staff were really great about capturing only themselves and the child,
Yeah.
which we, of course, I had permission to view. So that was one of the biggest game changers for me.
Hmm.
And then the other piece was that even if the special educators were feeling overwhelmed and they didn't necessarily want to engage with the platform, what I could
Hmm.
do is say, give me a goal that my
Hmm.
RBT is measuring or monitoring every day or teaching to every day. And we put it into Motivity and we collected data. And just before the IEP meeting, I pull a report. Here's your graph. Here's all the data.
Hmm.
And would you like this for your IEP meeting?
Yeah.
And what that did was it completely changed the conversation. Parents were suddenly like, oh, wow, look at all the progress. Instead of just hearing, you know, the, word of mouth of, yeah,
Hmm.
met this goal. Here's the data and here's the path that their progression took.
Yeah.
It was huge in IEP meetings. And the special educators in this case, or some of the cases, didn't have to lift a finger. They didn't even have to do anything because we were managing that.
Yeah. That's, I have a couple of questions. You answered kind of one of mine while I was talking. I'll maybe touch on that one because Alexandria and Chelsea, I'd like to hear your opinion too. So, um, thank you all for kind of your introductions to Motivity. For our audience today, we are going to keep this really conversation focused because we want to give our panelists the opportunity to just talk about what this looks like in their school systems. And ideally, then you have an idea of maybe if you have more questions, you can reach out to our team and we can connect you to the appropriate people. But just give you an understanding of the breadth of what this can look like and just honestly more exposure to what data collection looks like across different school settings and different models that you might have. So that being said, I'm going to keep it much conversational focus and like a Q&A, but please feel free. I saw Dr. Katie did add some information in the chat. We'd love to have you engage. And please feel free to ask questions as we're talking. Now, I did already tell our panelists they're not required to answer every question that comes through. So if some are just they don't feel are relevant or maybe they don't want to answer, we really want to respect that. But please feel free to throw things in the chat and we'll monitor that as it goes. So we would absolutely love some engagement. I have one more poll question, but I might save that for a little bit. But speaking to what you said, Katie, I'm really curious, and then the full panel's thought. So recently, Motivity was at the Council for Exceptional Children, the conference or convention in Salt Lake City, Utah, this past week. One thing that was really interesting is as people came up to us, we asked them, what's your role within your school? Or in general, what's your role? And then how do you currently collect data today? And I would say about 90% of the responses were however we can, or kind of like a grimace, like, "Ugh." So often it was maybe they're doing paper pencil. To Katie, what you were just saying, maybe it was kind of like we just kind of like gauge what we think's happening, and then we report a percentage based on that.
Or we probe
And
it. Maybe we probe it once or twice,
right.
because that's really all we can manage with all the other responsibilities. Yeah.
And I think that's an important part is one, I want to be so mindful about when I say that, what I care about is so what was really interesting about what we just spoke about, Katie, is when we think about educators, the expectations for them is like this long, and
Yeah.
then times that by 30 for all of the students that they're working with. So data collection can sometimes fall low on that priority list. And then when your administrator or your district doesn't maybe invest in it, then that also makes it harder. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on I guess why do you still think, and I probably just touched on it, but why do you still think that is the answer right now, that we're doing it however we can? And then maybe Katie, how do you feel that we could put something like your model more broad where we can take some of that response effort off of educators when that's maybe the most, powerful tool in a lot of schools?
Yeah, I, as always, have a lot of thoughts. One of the things, one of the things that really has worked for me in all of the schools that I've worked at is partnering really closely with teachers, whether they were
Mhm,
general education setting teachers or special education teachers, partnering with them and saying, like, I have a background
mhm,
in writing really measurable goals.
mhm.
It's part of our training as a BCBA. We live and breathe it all the time. And so
Mhm.
if you have an IEP goal and you're struggling to understand, well, how would I measure this? How would I collect data on this? And you
Yeah.
have a BCBA nearby, hand it to them and say, could you help me turn this into something measurable and make me a data sheet?
Yeah.
It's what we do, and that really does open the door to collaboration because one of the things I used to do is I used to say, okay, tell me about this 80% of 4 out of 5 trials. Do you
Yeah.
really mean 64%? Because 80% of 80% is
Right.
64%. Or do you mean, and even just asking those questions, most teachers are like, oh, actually, this is what I mean.
Right.
I can really quickly take what they're saying and put it into Motivity, create a
Yeah.
program quickly. And
Hmm.
I can say, do you want to probe this? Are you
Hmm.
using natural environment teaching? Are you teaching in the moment? Are you capturing opportunities? Are you sitting down at a table and do you want, several trials of this?
Yeah.
And I can turn that into a program. So in a conversation, I get to know who the teacher is. I sometimes get to know what their struggles are and what their
Hmm.
pain points are. I also get to know how they think about their teaching and how they want to teach and
Yeah.
how they perceive the student's abilities and learning style. And as a BCBA, we our science is about teaching and learning. We
Yeah.
can take all of that, put it in a program, and suddenly here's an electronic data sheet that
Hmm.
not only is it like no more graphing, no more like Google Sheets or Excel,
Yeah.
it's it's this easy.
Yeah.
It's this easy.
Yeah. But
So
I
I
mean,
hope
I
that
do.
answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there is a barrier of how do I even translate this IEP goal? It's one of the questions that I put in our conversation about translating IEP goals. But what I love is you broke it down in just almost a checklist. How do we want this to look? How do we want this to appear? And then that becomes so much more accessible to be able to then translate that easily for Alexandria and Chelsea, pulling that out a little bit when you're focusing on behaviors, have you found that are you guys writing the specific, measurable behaviors that you're tracking, or what does that look like in terms of how you collaborate with the whole team and operationally defining what you're looking at?
Yeah, one thing we realized quickly is we'll get a behavior referral. So we have two
Hmm.
models, our consultation and our intervention model. And when
Hmm.
we first go in, we kind of are going to observe the student to see, are they going to need this intervention support or does the teacher just need consultation? So when we
Yeah.
make that decision, like, okay, this kid could use some of our intervention
Hmm.
and we're going to place an IA there, then we're able to kind of in the moment work on or upload a learner's profile. And
Yeah.
the definition is typically written in our referral that we get from the school psychologist.
Okay.
But with Motivity, it allows us to kind of be able to modify that as we are
Yeah.
providing that support and observing the student. Like
Yeah.
maybe it didn't capture that the student also went under the table or something,
Right. Right.
So we are able to like really identify that or for how long, because
Yeah.
and also decide maybe this should be a duration measure versus a frequency measure. And so I love that we're able to kind of in real time modify that and update that during
Yeah.
that initial session, even to be able to make those changes as quickly as possible. And then the IA who's working with the student, it's live. So like I hit update and now they're able to take data on that specific behavior.
Yeah.
But yeah, we work with the school psychologists too on those operational definitions, like
Hmm.
um, working as a team collaboratively.
Hmm.
Some have different training, and so it is nice to be able to bring that expertise and help them with defining some of those
Hmm.
behaviors. The other thing is like maybe they want take data on every single behavior,
Yeah.
and so our team really tries to help prioritize behavior, or
Hmm.
see like, is it um, all the same function? And we can kind of say
Hmm.
like, this is a behavior episode,
Hmm.
instead of having to track every single behavior. And so, yeah, Motivity has just been helpful in that way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. I mean, you guys have a similar answer in that ultimately it's when you can collaborate effectively, then some of those kind of barriers get removed. So if you can show, if you can reduce response effort by having the people that are skilled in what they do those things, and then have those other people support in where that matters. So whether that's looking at a goal you're tracking for reduction or you're looking at an IEP goal, being able to support each other and what that looks like. So Dr. Katie, in your example, you have your teacher identify, here's the IEP goal we need to look at based on their expertise. And then you say, here's how we make this measurable and have our team collect data on it. And Alexandra and Chelsea doing something similar. That school psychologist that's been evaluating this student, giving you some information, but then in both parties being able to make adjustments and modifications because you have access to real-time data and things like that. Um, Something that you said too, Alexandra, really stands out to me is rather than waiting till that IEP meeting to understand, hey, this was our goal. Our goal is to track the frequency of X. But what we found is that it's really duration that we needed to be monitoring, or like intensity, severity, and not being able to make those adjustments in those first couple instances with your student rather than getting to that IEP meeting and then everybody kind of weighs in there. So the time in which you're able to make those adjustments is huge too.
Absolutely. And for us, we were, since we're not part of IEP meetings or IEP teams, we also, though, have social, or what is it called? Student study teams or
Okay.
success teams, where it's similar in the sense of like, what interventions are we trying to help support the student in the general education setting? So
Yeah.
it's kind of how in the gen ed world, those meetings, it's still important to be able to provide that information
Yeah.
and not wait so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A much more proactive approach that I see is happening in your school. Um, all right, I'm going to pull up some of the questions that we did based on conversations we've had with other schools and then just pulling from your expertise here on the panel. So, but we'll probably dive into, I just get stuck in these conversations because you guys give me the best answers. So, but we will try to go through some of these. So, this one is a little bit more straightforward, I think, but I do think it's important. Like I said, we still consistently hear that a lot of people are utilizing maybe more manual processes when it comes to collecting data. You've each touched on this a little bit, but maybe just kind of a summary, or we can kind of take this point home on how do you find that real-time data improves instructional agility compared to paper and pencil or Google Sheets, things like that. And Chelsea and Alexandria, I'm not sure what you guys were using before Motivity. I think it was just paper pencil. Yeah.
Yeah, so since we've made the change, it's amazing to kind of see the trends quite instantly
Yeah.
and we're able to make instant changes within the team, as you mentioned, like the ability
Yeah.
to change the measurement tool as well. I know like a lot of teams will shy away from duration just because you have to now buy a stopwatch, and how am I going to
Yeah.
know how long?
Yeah.
So you're
Didn't
just
even
kind of
think of that.
taking away from having to buy more materials for that particular student. And then, our team, when we do start working with a student, we like to give it a kind of a short span. So like we always
Okay.
say, like, we're going to reconvene in 6 to 8 weeks. So
Hmm.
that's not a whole lot of time for us to make any meaningful change. And so
Yeah.
the ability to be able to plop all of our information into an electronic data collection system, our team can get it instantly. And, unlike before, we might need to like re-meet and as a team, and we're having all these extra meetings that are potentially
Yeah.
not fully necessary. We can go and do our work the best we can for those 6 to 8 weeks. And then we can, like you said, Dr. The ability to pull up that data instantly and kind of show them like, this is where we're at with this. We're actually
Hmm.
noticing trends on like Wednesdays, and in our district, Wednesday's a short day. Can we talk about a little bit of how we could maybe modify the student day on
Hmm.
Wednesdays, and then, slowly start moving toward what the rest of the class is doing. And so it really just allows us to, you know, move at a quicker pace. We're a
Yeah.
lot more efficient. rather than kind of focusing on like, okay, let me explain to you this data sheet when we're out with our IAs. They're already trained in Motivity, and so
Yeah.
they see it. We're able to provide more of that like direct feedback in the moment where we're not having to cut out any time where we could be providing that direct support, having these little side meetings or conversations on
Mhm.
best approach or how we're going to modify. And so it's nice to also be able to like flip back and forth to where I could be like, here, you take the data. I'm going to show you what I meant by this. And then we'll
Yeah.
flip back and forth. And it's like, I don't know, too. I think the ability for our team to like just carry an iPad, for example, as opposed to
Mhm.
this big binder of things, it also like reduces some of that like stigma potentially, or
Yes.
now this student has like all this paperwork that's traveling with them, and like we don't want to isolate anyone or make that student feel like there's already more of that, more eyes on them, or like they're kind of being targeted with all the things. And um,
Yes.
we just really love that
Definitely.
ability to be a little more discreet in the way we can approach and working with these kiddos.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add, like, I love that we can go from the iPad and then if needed, like onto the your mobile phone even and
Yeah.
just be able to collect data a little more discreet that way. And just one thing I remember from the beginning is like when we would have to modify the operational definition that was on every data sheet.
Oh
And I had already
no.
printed like, 15 copies. And now I'm
Yes.
like, now I need to make that modification and reprint all these copies of the data sheet. And so that what I was mentioning earlier has been so helpful in the sense that like you can just upload it electronically in real time or make that change.
Yeah.
That reminds me too, didn't you work with a student, Alex, who was watching you collect data on him? And you collected like a green, like the plus was green and the red was minus. He had no idea what plus minus was, but he was like, "What's the green?" And then you explained to him like why you marked it as green, and he was like more motivated to like earn more greens. And like, so just even like that in it of itself was like fun, as opposed to
Yeah.
like, what's this person writing down constantly about me kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
wanted the green flags.
So cute. I love that.
Yeah.
There's also something that I I've been in schools a lot of years and I've taken data on paper for a long time. And I know that what tends to happen, despite our best intentions, is that those data sheets just stack up.
Yeah.
And eventually it's like, oh gosh, we have an in-service day I might be able to get to collect, tracking all that data.
Yeah.
And it's not until, 2, 3 weeks have gone by that we're putting everything into a database and then putting it into the graph and realizing, oh my goodness, that's not going the way we want it. But it's been three
Mhm.
weeks, and so maybe a behavior has started to become entrenched. And with Motivity, what we've got is instant feedback, right? So
Mhm.
best practices in education, formative assessment all the time, just all the time checking in. Are the kids getting what I'm putting down, right?
Mhm.
And if they're not, we change what we're doing
Mhm.
as teachers, as classroom teachers, as special education teachers, as IAs. Motivity gives us that feedback to help us make those adjustments to
Yeah.
our teaching.
Yeah.
And, for many frontline staff, they'll wait for their BCBA or the special educator case manager to give them instructions.
Mhm.
But even if we're not in the room for a week, we can
Right.
look, we can go in a live session and watch what's going on.
Mhm.
And not to
And
mention the ability to split by staff too is
play by
also
staff,
huge.
one of my favorites.
Yep.
Yeah.
Be like, what's going on over here with this person on these particular days, you know?
Yeah.
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 Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we work all across the district, and so we're mobile. We're driving from site to site.
Yeah.
In typical like 2 to 3 hour shifts, our IAs at least. And then we are doing our best to overlap with them, make it to
Yeah.
meetings and stuff. So that feature does allow us to say like, okay, this IA might have a little more, might need a little bit more training or like what's going on in this setting. Alternatively, oh, the student's doing so well with this staff. What are they doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of be able to do like it helps us decide which overlaps we can make happen and what and prioritize really too what we need to see so that we can make those changes. And so it's really nice that we get to do that or like just log into a session as they're collecting data and be able to chat with them about what's going on. So that's really been super helpful for like the supervision part and the oversight,
Yeah.
being able to get to all those cases.
It's kind of one of those, I don't know if I should say hidden, but something that you don't realize, I think, until you've experienced the difference between paper pencil to electronic data, where you're like, oh, the worst thing, one of the things I think is not beneficial as a supervisor is if you go into a meeting with any person that you're supervising and you feel like, I don't know what oh gosh, I don't know what we should focus on this week. Like you don't have visibility into what to talk about or what feedback to provide. It's just such a disservice, of course. And so to your point, when you do have feedback like that in terms of just again something hidden, it's like the data was always there, but it was a lot harder to see when you don't have a system that's doing things for you in a way that's more automated in real time. And so now you are not just benefiting that student, you're benefiting the team that's working with that student so that overall the progress is just happening faster and it's making a difference for everybody involved, both for that student and then Alexandria and Chelsea with you kind of having, I was going to say turnover, but that's not the word, having a, you, discharge isn't the word. How would you guys describe it? Like you do go through students quickly because that's what your goal is. Your goal is to get them to the least intrusive amount of support. So I don't want to say turnover. What would you guys call that?
We just say we fade our support.
Yeah, they
Okay,
need
okay.
our support.
Yeah, because you're fading your support so quickly, you do need your IAs to there's like a quick ramp time that they need to have for the students that you're working with. And so all of those things become far more important in that type of a model.
Can I just address a little bit the sort of the 50,000 foot question, if you will, from your original observation, Catherine, at CEC
Yeah,
conference, is that a lot of people are like, "Ooh, yeah, it's just as best we can, like we're collecting data as best we can."
yeah.
There, there's a pressure from district level, which comes from regulations and,
Hmm.
and laws in many states that
Yeah.
require data-driven decision making.
Hmm.
And the reality of that is rules get made, policies get put into place,
Hmm.
procedures get described, and the people who end up needing to figure out how to make it happen tend to be the teachers.
Yeah.
And sometimes the principals, the leaders in a school setting. But if we haven't actually given our teams the tools, something
Hmm.
like Motivity,
Yeah.
to to collect data in a way that's efficient and effective, doesn't put additional strain on their time and resources, and also does the analysis component for them.
Yeah.
I mean, not the sort of the heady analysis, but
Right,
the
right.
visual representation of the data. Here it is. Now you
Yeah.
can quickly make decisions. Motivity really supports all of those policies and regulations that are happening around the
Yeah.
country, which data-driven decision making is a good thing. But when
Yeah.
it creates that burden of responsibility in places where people don't necessarily have the tools or the knowledge to put it in place, that's when we have that sort of like, oh, as best we can. That's sort of like, I know I'm supposed to be doing this better, but
Yeah.
I don't know how, I don't have the tools.
Yeah.
And so at that district level, I guess my question tends to be like, how do we bring the importance, the urgency of a tool like
Yep.
Motivity into the district decision making
Hmm.
and help integrate Motivity with existing systems?
Yes.
And yes, it's FERPA compliant, and yes, it's really effective and efficient. And the training component, like that learning curve, isn't too bad.
Yeah, which sorry, Katie, I'm gonna put you on the
Yeah.
spot a little bit. So I 1000% agree. It almost felt like they thought like we were gonna take things, and of course we were all, it was incredible meeting all the people we met with, and I feel like became quick friends with everyone, but it did feel like that they were like, I don't want to answer because I don't want you to report back to my district, as if we were gonna do something
Yeah.
like that. But you're totally right. There was that feeling. So when I've kind of thought about now, in full transparency, I've never ha had to do this myself. I've worked in mostly private schools, so data collection systems were in place. But thinking about and some of the other things, the information we gathered at CEC is, of course, like audits matter with schools. So I'm curious, how have you found, or what kind of tools do you think exist within Motivity and electronic data collection systems that help reduce having issues when a school does go through an audit? Like, what types of things are powerful so that you could say to a district, if they need to look beyond just an individual learner, they need to look at what matters for their regulations. What do you see in that type of realm?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is reducing liability and risk
Yeah.
at the IEP level for special education directors. Knowing how often advocates and attorneys are brought into IEP meetings. I'm
Yeah.
very familiar with both sides of that.
Yeah.
Having been an advocate and also having been um, the BCBA on the team.
Hmm.
Several things don't need to happen. If you, something like Motivity prevents the tension,
Yeah.
prevents the conflict around where's your data? I mean, that's one of the questions that gets asked. Where's your data?
Yeah.
And so even just reducing your risk and improving the team cohesion, that's
Hmm.
huge
Yeah.
and almost not measurable,
Yeah.
ironically. And so that's a really important piece. Um, but also I've worked at district levels where districts are dealing with massive data analysis,
Hmm.
massive on their behavior, just their behaviors.
Yeah.
And the systems that exist now that I have encountered do not actually collect behavior data on the student's behavior as much as they collect discipline data, which is teacher behavior.
Fascinating.
So I see that a lot, and something like Motivity having that integrated with all of their other systems, right? Don't
Yeah.
throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like keep the systems, keep that understanding of those discipline actions.
Yeah.
And can we also get the data on the student behavior itself?
Right. Right. That is really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, capturing the data on the intervention. So a question for all of you then that I'm curious about. So, in thinking about how to continue to utilize the systems that already exist, um, and I guess Alexandria and Chelsea, I don't know particularly at Clovis Unified what exists in terms of strategies that you have. One thing that I've set up for different schools that utilize Motivity is trying to have like whether that's an image or a almost like a mini TA of, hey, we're working on, and Katie, correct me if I'm kind of thinking beyond what you were describing, but making sure that if this student can benefit from something like I'm going to use ABA lingo because I'm not as familiar with PBIS. So let's say like a first then board, we can actually like have an image of that board or that item so that then the IA or the paraprofessional or paraeducator knows how to utilize that tool effectively. And so that's where I can see some of those existing systems integrate. One, I guess, Katie, am I thinking correctly to what you were describing? Maybe not. And then Alexandria and Chelsea, have you been able to see that? Like, hey, Clovis Unified, when we think about intervention strategies we use within our school, have you been able to integrate that into Motivity? And Katie, maybe I was totally off from what you were thinking.
I wanted to take turns and share the air. So like go ahead, Alexandria.
Yeah, well, something that you were making me think of, Dr. Palmer, was that, like, for example, when our student does engage in maybe physical aggression at school and then they are sent to the office, there's like a record that's kept. And it's really, like you were saying, on the disciplinary side of like, well, what was the consequence for that behavior? It's not necessarily the data on the behavior, but for our team, we have like the data for the behavior.
Mhm.
Um, and so maybe how can we bridge that gap too to show not just the teacher and like the response to
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can kind of see how maybe we can potentially be able to merge that or like
Yes.
in that
So
way.
yeah, essentially there is a way that we could set up something for the classroom teacher, right? So when we talk about multi-tiered system of supports, which is what PBIS is, whether you're using CI3T or RTI or sorry, they're all multi-tiered
You mean
systems of
there's more
support.
acronyms that
There's
we
more
have to?
acronyms.
Yes.
Acronym soup. But if you're in
Yes.
schools, you probably have heard these response to instruction. Um, in these systems of supports, there tends to be tier one, tier two, tier three. It's really, you can look at those tiers across social, emotional, academic, and behavioral interventions. And that tier one, I really prefer when this all wrapped up into a single sort of system. But at that tier one, that's your regular general ed classroom, typical one teacher. Maybe you have a classroom aide if you're lucky, and
Mhm.
25 to 35 kids, right?
Yeah.
And what we want to do is, in addition to this kid did something and here's what they did and here's what the response was, right? Which is the typical behavior data collection for many PBIS systems. So we actually want that moment in the classroom. So Motivity could, if we were going to get really excited and get into these classrooms, Motivity could really be a tool for teachers to collect data on classroom behavior, which
Yeah.
again, formative assessment. I
Yeah.
see that kids are, they're just starting to, oh, things are just starting to pop a little bit. I'm going
Hmm.
to pause. And if I use mindfulness in my classroom, maybe that's a mindfulness moment. Or if I use Go Noodle, maybe that's a Go Noodle moment, right? Or,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do it before these things get out of hand, not as a reinforcer, but as a
Yeah.
prevention. If those things tend to work, those tools work, I know when to use them. And if
Yeah.
we start to see kids getting sent to the office from a particular classroom, we can then also look, oh, there were 10 challenging behaviors and 3 kids got sent to the office. But in this classroom, there were 50 challenging behaviors
Yeah.
and they were all handled within the classroom. Right now, as a leader, as a district leader, as a school leader, now I have information, I have data to,
Yeah.
to work into my teacher training.
Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
it's any level you want to go at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I immediately went to that one-on-one ABA.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because that is where most people go. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
electronic data collection, let's put it into special ed, or I
Yeah.
love what Clovis is doing, but let's put it into these like high intense behavior.
Yeah.
Let's put it in tier one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we can increase the prevention, and then we're going to shrink our tier three numbers, right? And
Yeah.
we're gonna be able to spend more time at that tier two intervention stuff.
Right. Right.
I get
Right.
so excited about the ideas.
Well, I love that. I literally had like a whole cartoon in my head of exactly what you're describing. You had me with you right there, every step that you described.
Okay, good, good.
No, I
Oh,
do love that too. Because we're typically like our team is really in that like tier two, tier three model.
yeah.
Or that's when our team like where we kind of come into play. But we always talk about, well, what about like more preventative approaches, right? Like
Mhm.
that tier one, like whole classroom management systems. And so we do try and provide trainings for that, but the data collection piece is missing, right? Like, do we know if that's like in place
Yeah,
and effective
yeah.
before we're coming and sending a referral for these more intensive supports? And so I do love that idea and think that that would be great. And what's unique about Clovis as well is that each site has their own autonomy, every single school.
Mm.
So it is up to their own admin on how they want to deliver that MTSS model.
Mhm.
And so we do have some PBIS schools and some we don't. And so another challenge, maybe that's one of the challenges that we face that
Yeah.
you kind of asked in the beginning, was kind of going in to see like what is your system
Yeah.
currently, and how can we come in and support? And sometimes we are utilized more as a consultation base and we do some training and
Hmm.
modeling and we're able to give some recommendations and the teacher is happy with that and they've got it, and the school site has a system in place already, and okay, now I know how to utilize this a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, then there's some that are just like, can you come and please help because this kid is taking all of our time and we need extra support.
Yeah.
And so we kind of try to come in and say, like, well, is this kid needing more support than what we can even provide? Or like
Hmm.
the general education setting in general? Or is it that maybe some of those tier one and tier two things are missing and we
Yeah.
can try and help not only train and teach the teachers and staff to have those in place, and maybe we get to see changes in behavior just with that,
Yeah.
versus having to have like this one-on-one intensive behavior intervention plan for the
Hmm.
student. And so our level of support kind of varies in that way. But Motivity does allow us to take data at any of those levels if we're involved. So once we get that referral, so we are able to kind of take that ABC data or kind of have those check boxes of like, is or does this teacher have any reinforcement system in place?
Yeah.
That like 4-to-1 ratio we're always looking at of positive to corrective feedback. And so
Hmm.
we kind of try to help start there when we give our recommendations.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I can see that it could be utilized at that level, and teachers could help us with the reporting of that. Because if not, like it's only when our team is scheduled out there to capture
Right.
that data. And so there are more time, there's more times in the
Missing. Yeah.
day that we're kind of missing that data. Or like we'll come in and it's like, oh, something happened yesterday when you guys left and now the kid's suspended. And
Mm.
so it would be so nice to be able to have, that kind of ongoing data
Yeah.
where the teacher can just kind of log in and collect. Although I do see our teachers being like, oh, it's one more thing for me to do.
Well, you'll just have
Yeah.
to do like Dr. Katie did and just create a model where you're reducing that
Yeah.
responsibility.
Well,
Yeah.
and sometimes it does require like, I'm going to take this burden on,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
that you can experience the value of the outcome of this
Yeah.
process. And what I have found is when I partner with teachers like that, and I'm willing to make time to do that, they are much more interested in spending the time. They realize the value of their time is well placed there.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, I'm 100% okay demonstrating that, rather than asking them to just believe me because I said so.
Yeah.
Just believe me. Um, this, I love hosting our webinars because I learned so much. And I think kind of the aha moment I just had when all of you were talking is we focus so much on a least restrictive model, but really what does that mean and what can that look like? And so I appreciate that insight. I've been trying to figure out what I want my last question to be because we only have a couple of minutes, but we touched on this a little bit throughout the conversation. And honestly, I think there was a different last question I wanted to end on, but I've just appreciated all of the insights you guys have provided. What I want to make sure we don't miss out is on parents. So they're such an important role in any sort of engagement with the students that you guys work with or have worked with. And so in general. How do you find that utilizing an electronic data collection system helps support parent engagement? And something I think that's incredibly important, and I'm sure you do as well, is also just knowledge and understanding of what's happening for their child. Dr. Prama, I'm sure you've done this, but I've tried to even do it on a smaller level, is just help translate the IEP report for a family before. But in general, I guess with a system like Motivity, how do you see that maybe supports parent engagement, parent consent, assent into things that are happening with their child? In specifically a setting that they are not present in, I think is important to note.
Do you want me to answer this one? No?
Chelsea, you can start, sure.
Okay, cool. I think in general, though, I would say it just puts into perspective any patterns or like potential trends. Having Motivity, we're able to see the day-to-day data. And so they can see maybe patterns or trends that, may or may not be present as a
Mhm.
barrier for their child. And so If we're noticing that like the student is having kind of a difficult time on certain days, then
Mhm.
we might recommend, has the student been able to visit the cafeteria for breakfast or something like
Yeah,
that. Um, Being able to kind of tease out like when behaviors seem to spike more than others, and if parents may have any ideas into why, like, some of those extraneous variables that like
yeah.
maybe we're not able to see. Um, yeah.
I
I
had
think there's
go ahead, John.
I was
Alexander.
just gonna say, I think it's so important. Like, if you're coming in on a Monday, what happened that whole weekend that could serve as a setting event, or that whole night before that could serve as a setting event? All these things, especially when you maybe are working with I was gonna say you're working with a child with impaired communication. Frankly, if I'm in a bad mood and you ask me why, I'm gonna turn and walk away from you. So, I think there's information that caregivers have that's so relevant to how to support that child in that moment in that day.
And then also just maybe letting them know too, like they met their goal or didn't. And if they didn't, like here's some recommendations at home that we might suggest that would
Yeah.
vary from a day that maybe they did meet their goal, for example, and just being able to
Hmm.
communicate that with them. Like this particular area was a struggle for them today. So how can
Hmm.
we best support them not only in the academic setting, but even in their home setting as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
We
definitely. There's been times where we've like, oh, they have a really hard time with their morning routine. Well, here's like some materials that might help in the morning if you have a little like morning routine
Yeah.
checklist
Visual
or
schedule, yeah.
yeah, something like that. Or we create like bedtime routine or stories and things that can
Hmm.
the parents can read to with their kid or start trying to work in some of that like structure and then reinforcement for that before they come
Hmm.
to school. So then they're kind of already prepared
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
helpful.
we had
Sorry,
a
Dr. Palmer.
no, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I had a particular family who they were very focused on ensuring their child was learning about around some specific escalation behaviors at school, and they
Hmm.
wanted to really hear about the challenges that that child was
Hmm.
experiencing throughout the day. And the teachers didn't want to focus too much on the negative. They wanted to also focus on, and that was creating some tension because the parents wanted to know. So what we did was we created a homeschool log, and the parents
Hmm.
can actually, if you wish it, they can sign into their portal on Motivity. And
Hmm.
this homeschool log actually showed data. So the
Yeah.
parents were seeing at the end of the day, here are some successes, here were some challenges, here's the data on this child's escalations, and here's the data on how they engaged with their peers
Yeah.
appropriately. And what that did was it helped them feel, okay, nobody's, shining this penny for us.
Hmm.
And we can see it. And then they could sign it. And so everyone knew that they had looked at it. And it
Hmm.
actually reduced the tension.
Hmm.
It reduced their hyper focus on challenging behaviors.
Right.
And everybody was happy. It was
I
great.
think there was a caregiver communication type log that we had created for a school, but then when we had maybe similar to the student that you had worked with, Alexandra, that was actually watching you collect data and seeing how that maybe motivated things. But what was so eye-opening to similar to the point that you just brought up, Dr. Palmer, is that this individual had the ability to read what was being presented. And that really shifted the way information was relayed. Because, of course, critical information should be getting to caregivers and parents. But if the only focus was on what were the challenges today, then this poor child never felt they were successful in anything. And, that is never fun. And so, how we can modify those types of tools to make sure caregivers get the information they need, but it is in a way that's productive for everybody. And then to Alexandra, you were talking about that 4-to-1 ratio of reinforcement to correction. Some ways that we even present information, to the individual student, maybe we're doing a great job making sure that we have um, a reinforcement schedule that's potent enough. But when we go back to parents, if they're only ever hearing one story, then that's difficult too. And so that type of data and visibility and engagement just brings so many of these other things to light that then you can modify for everybody that's involved with that child, which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know how we managed. We exactly at the hour. Thank you all again. I cannot tell you. For the audience members, there was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 questions, and I think we got through three that I actually wrote down because I was just so engaged in what you guys were talking about. So, I really, really appreciate everyone's time. What I'll do really quickly, I was going to put my email in the chat, but we'll be sending follow-up emails. So if you have questions, will kind of serve as a barrier between the three of you, but absolutely want to make sure people have the ability to talk with us and ask questions about the topics that were covered from today. And we're always welcome to feedback too. So if you think there's something that we missed, please send it in our way, and we'll make sure that maybe we can have webinars of specific focus. But thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Good
for having me.
afternoon for those. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, go have your lunch breaks, but you guys, it's go have another coffee break. And I again really appreciate the time you spent with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
You.
Thanks for
Of course.
having us.
Yeah, of course. All right, have a good one, everyone. See you
Bye.
soon.
Bye.